Good afternoon, everybody. Anthony Aniano here from RotoBaller Radio and RotoBaller.com with an early look at the Week 12 Fantasy Football Waiver Wire. The waiver wire as you enter Week 12 of your Fantasy Football League. Now, full disclosure, as always, recording this Sunday evening before the Sunday night and before the Monday night matchups. That's why we call it an early look at that waiver wire. Yahoo roster percentages are our talking point. Trying to find players available in 50% or more of Yahoo leagues. Now, Week 12, I should say, we have 6 teams on a bye. We have the Atlanta Falcons, the Buffalo Bills, the Cincinnati Bengals, Jacksonville Jaguars, New Orleans Saints, and the New York Jets. It's a busy bye week, losing quite a few players there. Your Atlanta players, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, your Buffalo Bills offense, James Cook, Josh Allen, Cincinnati Bengals, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, the Jaguars, Evan Ingram maybe, the Saints, you lose a little bit as well, and then the Jets, they're Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, maybe Devontae Adams as well. So let's get into it. No major injuries of note reported as of now during Week 11. The Raiders' backfield got beat up. Zamir White with a quad injury, and Alexander Mattison with an ankle. Darnell Mooney left the game at wide receiver for the Falcons, but he'll be entering the bye week. Hopefully he's okay in 2 weeks. So let's start at the quarterback position. Maybe it's Kirk Cousins or Josh Allen or Joe Burrow that you got to make up for. There's a few players available in more than 50% of leagues. First up is Bo Nix of the Denver Broncos. He's 48% rostered. He's available in 52% of leagues. On the road next week at the Las Vegas Raiders. This week, 307 yards, 4 touchdowns. Fantastic performance against the Atlanta Falcons, and a great matchup. Like I said, that Vegas defense can be exploited. In a 6-point per touchdown format, just under 36 fantasy points for Bo Nix. He's got 25 or more fantasy points in 4 of his last 7 games and 6 touchdowns in his last 2. Up second, Anthony Richardson of the Indianapolis Colts. He comes back from the benching. The Joe Flacco era is over in Indianapolis. And I watched that game against the Jets, and he looked good. He hit the ball down the field. He hit Pittman, Pierce, nice pass to Mitchell. He ran the ball effectively like you would want. He's available in 53% of Yahoo leagues, rostered in 47% of them. 20 of 30, 67% completion percentage, 272 yards, and the touchdown. The final drive, that's monstrous for a young quarterback, making, I think the stat was his 11th start, or was it his 15th start of his career. Runs for 32 yards and the 2 rushing touchdowns. That's what you really want out of Anthony Richardson. Finishes with 30 fantasy points. Much tougher matchup next week against the Detroit Lions. But again, with all those teams on bye, Anthony Richardson is available in 50% or more of Yahoo formats. Up third, Jameis Winston of the Cleveland Browns, 12% rostered. He may be the most readily available depending upon the size of your league, available in 88% of formats. 395 yards and 2 touchdowns this week. 30 or more fantasy points in a 6-point per passing touchdown format in 2 of his last 4 starts since taking over for Cleveland. He's got 7 touchdowns in those 4 starts, 3 interceptions, but all 3 of those were in the same game, Week 9. His other 3 starts, he hasn't gotten intercepted. 35.6 fantasy points this week. Now, a very tough matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But again, he might be the one guy who is available with Richardson and Bo Nix in deeper formats, maybe already rostered. Jameis Winston may be the next man up. Now, the running back position, not much help out there this week in Week 12, but 2 players to be mentioned in case you're desperate. Bijan Robinson, James Cook, Chase Brown, Travis Etienne, Alvin Kamara, Breece Hall, all on a bye week this week. 2 players to be mindful of. Up first, Amir Abdullah of the Vegas Raiders, with the potential of Zamir White or Alexander Mattison being injured. We still have to see what that injury report comes to. It'll be Mattison first. If he can't go, then it's Zamir White. If he can't go, then it's Amir Abdullah. Abdullah's available everywhere. He's a freebie right now, and it's not somebody I necessarily want to use, but it may be desperate times with those bye weeks. Okay, didn't do much running the ball. Did have a touchdown reception this week for the Raiders, 10.7 fantasy points. He's available 100% of Yahoo leagues. Goes up against the Denver Broncos next week. Also available if you're touchdown dependent, Rashawn Johnson of the Chicago Bears, 7% roster, available in 93% of leagues. He did get 10 carries, tied for the most carries he's gotten in a game all season. Got the same 10 carries back in week 5, but he's really truly touchdown dependent, and he did cross the get into the end zone in week 11. 10 for 33 and a touch. Finished with over 11 fantasy points, had 1 reception for 8 yards. He's got 4 touchdowns on the season. DeAndre Swift still does the heavy lifting for the Bears running game. However, on the goal line, we've seen Rashawn Johnson get some work. If you need a dart throw running back, he's available in 93% of leagues. Tough matchup for the Bears next week against the Vikings defense. At the wide receiver position, and again, be mindful of some of the wide receivers who are going to be out on a bye next week. Atlanta, no Drake London. The Jets, no Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson. Buffalo, Khalil Shakir, Amari Cooper. Cincinnati, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Nobody really on Jacksonville I'm worried about. And New Orleans, Marquez Valdez-Scantling's come on late. We'll mention him in a minute. A couple of wide receivers to be mindful of. Elijah Moore has been under the radar, a target monster for Jameis Winston. He's available in 92% of Yahoo leagues. This week, he goes 6 catches, 66 yards, and a touchdown on 8 targets. 18.6 fantasy points. Again, Cleveland tough matchup, though, next week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. However, over his last 3 games, Elijah Moore has 17 receptions on 29 targets. Do that math real simple. It's essentially 6 catches on 10 targets per week for Elijah Moore over the last 3 games. People talk about Tillman. Jerry Jeudy had a monster game this week, the 140-plus yards and the touchdown. But Elijah Moore is turning into a reliable target for Jameis Winston. Up second, Demario Douglas of the New England Patriots. 28% rostered, available in 82% of formats. 7 targets, 5 catches, 59 yards. Kendrick Bourne got in the end zone. It's just that Demario Douglas has been more consistent week in and week out. 10.9 fantasy points. He's got 5 games this season of 10 or more fantasy points. Some people may prefer Bourne, ability to get in the end zone, but Demario Douglas has been a reliable target for whoever's been at quarterback for the Patriots. Next week, New England on the road at the Miami Dolphins. And finally, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Now, they're on a bye next week, the Saints, and I'm not buying in on MVS. However, people have asked me about him. He's available in 75% of leagues. This week, 2 catches, 87 yards, the touchdown, the 71-yarder, 16.7 fantasy points. However, I just want to remind you, Marquez Valdez-Scantling is what he is at this point. This is the reason he's been on so many teams. Over the last 2 games, he does have 42 fantasy points, 3 touchdowns, 196 yards. What you don't like, it's only 7 targets over those 2 games, and it's only 5 receptions. You're going with MVS, you're hinging your bet on the big play. He's not going to be a PPR him to death type of wide receiver. A couple of tight ends to be mindful of. Again, bye week. You're going to lose Kyle Pitts. You're going to lose Mike Gesicki, Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid in Buffalo, Evan Ingram, Taysom Hill with the Saints, all now on a bye week. So a couple of players to be mindful of. First up is Isaiah Likely of the Baltimore Ravens. Remember Isaiah Likely? Somebody in your league bid an astronomical amount of fab for him after week 1. And then he crashed back to earth. Mark Andrews was involved and eventually got injured and was probably put back on the waiver wire, was Isaiah Likely, as evident by the fact he's only rostered in 26% of leagues, available 74%. Isaiah Likely came back this week and was healthy. 5 targets, 4 catches, 75 yards for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens in their loss to the Steelers. Okay, lost a fumble, 9.5 fantasy points. They are on the road at the Chargers next week. Also available, 2 rookies to be mindful who are coming off a bye week in Week 11. First up is Theo Johnson of the New York Giants, available in 99% of leagues. 7 catches, 88 yards, and a touchdown in his last 2 games on 12 targets. 21.8 fantasy points over those last 2. Has a good matchup next week against the Tampa Bay Bucks. Whoever's playing quarterback for the Giants, it may very well be Drew Lock. We'll know in a few days. But Tampa Bay gives up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. And Jatavian Sanders of the Carolina Panthers, available in 98% of leagues, also on a bye this week. 12 or more fantasy points in 2 of his last 4 games, with 14 targets over those 4 games. Against Kansas City next week, Kansas City allowing the second most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. So, to recap, as I operate with only one arm here, so to recap, my top ads for Week 12 of the fantasy football season: quarterbacks, Bo Nix, Anthony Richardson, Jameis Winston; running backs, Amir Abdullah and Rashawn Johnson; wide receivers, Elijah Moore, Demario Douglas, and Marquez Valdes-Scantling; and at the tight end position, Isaiah Likely, Theo Johnson, and Jatavian Sanders. As always, everybody, head over to RotoBaller.com. Sign up now for the NFL Premium Pass. Use the promotional code ACES and save at checkout. Use that for any of our promo codes, promotional passes, basketball, NHL, whatever it is you're looking for, getting ready for baseball in the spring. RotoBaller.com has you covered, whether it's season-long DFS or sports betting. Like and subscribe right here to the RotoBaller YouTube channel and download the RotoBaller app. It is completely free. Take advantage of that right away as well. Everything on the site right there on the app. Give me a follow on X at @Aniano Fantasy, and we'll see you next time right here on RotoBaller Radio.